Okay, so Kindo.com, Gareth, you're founder or co-founder?
Co-founder.
Okay.
There's four of us that started it.
Okay, so what is it? How did you get started? What's the story?
In the short story is that I started a web applications company. Three of the guys that started Kindo were in that company when we started Kindo, or at least when we kind of finished the web apps company that started Kindo. And we kind of all got to a point where we wanted to do an application, to do a product, rather than working for clients all the time. We talked about this briefly just now. Just client work gets very tiring, and cash flow problems, and dealing with trying to do both at the same time. It just doesn't work unless you've kind of got a really, really good situation. So we started looking at a product. I pitched quite a few products to different investors. None of them got accepted. We went back to the drawing board, and the whole idea of Kindo came around. And to put it in a nutshell, Kindo is like it's a new take on the traditional family tree. So what we're doing is we're saying, everybody wants to know about their family and about their family tree. Well, here's a really nice online version that you can have. And so what we've done is we built that, and then we started building out social features to enable the family to interact with each other. And yeah, it's been really interesting. I mean, we've grown pretty quickly. We've got users in 150 plus countries. I think we're about to launch our 17th or 18th language this week or next week. It's going to be Estonian. And it's been a really cool experience.
How many people are in the company?
We've got
and how many nationalities of those? Because I know there's some very interesting stats when it comes to Kindo family.
Yeah, the interesting thing is, so we're in London, and we've got one English guy working for us. He's a designer, Andy, awesome guy. But he's the only English guy.
But he's a minority.
He's a minority, yeah, definitely. So if I think of the office, we've got so we've got Andy, the English guy. We've got 3 South Africans. We've got a Canadian. We've got Swedish, German, French, and then in terms of the general kind of sphere of people that are working for us, our country managers, we've got Turkish, Chinese, I think Argentinian, Brazilian, Spanish, Estonian, Danish, Norwegian.
So the whole UN, the whole UN.
Yeah. I mean, it's we've got in total we've got roughly like 23, 24 people. It kind of fluctuates a bit, and they're from all over the world. Like it's been a really, really interesting experience working with so many different cultures.
And I think it reflects on our product as well, because almost from your launch you went internationally completely, right? So you've always been super international, obviously, because of that influence.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it was a really long discussion when we started. Is when you build something, you can either go really deep in features, but kind of suffer on the international part of things, or you can kind of go a bit broader in features and really focus on being international. And we felt that family was international. Very few people have got families that live next door to them their whole lives and stay there. My family is international. All of the co-founders' families were international. It just made sense. So we focused on solving kind of language problems first, and internationalization in code. And that proved pretty difficult. But once we kind of got that sorted out, it meant rolling out languages was going to be a lot easier. So now it's we do the translation, we roll the language out. It's much quicker. Once you can do Chinese and Cyrillic, it gets a lot easier.
Yeah, definitely. So you've been going for how long now?
We signed our funding in April of last year. So it's April 2007. And we went live on October 22nd of 2007. So I'd say where we are now, it's like what, 14 months, 15 months? Okay. A year and a half in like a month's time, 2 months' time.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I guess you've been growing quite nicely, and you've also recently closed another round of financing. Is that right? Yeah. I mean, we well, in addition to the first round of financing that we had, we closed another round. The primary guys that joined in that round were the Skype founding engineers. They set up a fund in Estonia called ASI, and so they put some money in from there. And then we took some more money from existing investors as well. And we talked a little bit about before the interview, but how do you grow? How do you attract new user base, right? Because obviously there's a gazillion social networks out there, right? Everyone is somewhat overloaded now. So I was always curious to find out when if there's a new social site or relatively new, how do you go about attracting those users? How do you maintain the growth that everyone obviously strives for? Yeah.
Should I talk like the whole story, big picture that we talked about just now?
Yeah, I mean I found that quite interesting. Right, cool. It's kind of insight from from the trenches.
Yeah, from the trenches. Okay, so this is from the trenches. The problem you have when you're starting out is that everybody wants scale, everybody wants size. You expect it to get to Flickr size, to Facebook size, like overnight. And it's just not realistic. It's totally not realistic. Unless you've got something that's kind of super viral. So Skype for me is one of those things. I started using it probably 18 months before my friends did, and I just told everybody to use it. But that's kind of the last product that I've done that with. Everything has been kind of incidental. So you're faced with this unrealistic expectation where you don't have the cash flow to last 3 years, but you know that it's going to take 3 years to get to any sort of size if you're going to do that with word of mouth, with blogging, with PR, kind of the hard way, as it were. So that's one way of doing it. The problem is that you just don't have the cash flow, and unless you've got a product where you're asking for money up front and you can actually subsidize the cost of running the business on a daily basis, it's not possible. So you end up taking more money, and then when you take more money, of course you have to give away more equity, which is not a good situation to be in. So ideally you want a rich sugar daddy who just gives you money for 3 years. Very few people have that. Or you've got to have a product that makes money. Very few people have that in this day and age because everybody wants something for free. So the next best option is to say, well, let's take some of our budget and get users quickly. And the best way we found is just to use Google AdSense. Simply enough.
I found that interesting because, it's quote unquote quite controversial, right? Because everyone speaks about viral strategies, word of mouth, etc. But here, you come out and straight up, Google AdSense, right?
Yeah.
And I found that unusual because you never hear that being used in the social aspect.
Right. Yeah. I mean, maybe I'm going to get shut down for this, and I hope so, because it'll create some discussion. But the interesting thing is that, everybody talks about this whole network effect. You've got to do some blogging. We've done blogging. We've got alerts for our competitors and for us on Google. We know when somebody writes about us, and we've probably got more press than any of our competitors on the internet, and that's through all the PR that we've done. That still hasn't made us grow faster than them, and we know for a fact that our competitors are doing exactly the same thing that we're doing. Maybe I'm the only one talking about it, but
yeah,
they're doing exactly the same thing, and in some cases they're spending more money than we are. So yeah, we've learned how to be better at organic search and finding people organically. And if I look at the numbers, I don't want to talk about the numbers now, but
yeah,
I'll talk in kind of percentages. So we've grown from the day we started to where we are now. We're probably 5 to 6 times better in terms of the number of users we get per day organically. I think that's pretty good improvement over a period of, say, 6 or 7 months.
Yeah.
If we have to flip the switch on marketing, we would probably increase that by 50%. So you look at the differential, it just makes total sense. You can acquire, tens of thousands of users a week, and if you've got enough money, up into the hundreds of thousands a week, if you've got the right kind of money and you know what you're doing with AdSense. We tried Google advertising, sorry, not Google advertising, Facebook advertising, social ads. We tried ad campaigns. We tried different sites. We've tried everything. And the fact is that if you have a set amount of cash, you've got $10,000, for example, and you want to spend that, you're probably going to get best bang for buck from Google AdSense. And we were saying earlier, that's why Google is such a good company, is because they give you that,
yeah,
and you can't get that anywhere else. We've gone to companies or properties and say, hey, we want to put an advert up, and they say, cool, we'll give you a CPA of, for argument's sake, 50 pence, and we compare that to what we get with Google AdSense, and it's like, well, why should we? There's no point. Rather spend the money on Google. We're not doing this for fun. So it's been a really interesting experience. It's taught me a lot about SEO and how you can actually benefit from the long tail. If you look at Kendo and you look carefully, you'll see some of the stuff that we're doing for the long tail get really effective, but that still doesn't compare to just buying users. We said this again, and I want to caveat everything I've said, is that it doesn't matter how much you spend on buying users. If you don't have a good product, you're wasting money. Don't do it. So we feel we've got a good product, so it's a good investment. But at the end of the day, if your product's not good enough, your users are going to come, they're not going to come back.
Yeah.
And I think that's a problem that everybody is trying to solve, is that nobody, and this includes Facebook, it includes Twitter, most of the major social sites out there, none of them know how to get users to come back. The only users that come back are what? I can think of something that I use very often is the Gumtree to buy and sell stuff in London, eBay, LinkedIn, I use probably once or twice a month, and then I use stuff like Basecamp and Google Mail and Google Calendar. Like, those are the things I use every day. So I think that's the differential, is that you've got to build something that people want to use if you're going to generate cash on it.
So and how are you going to generate cash with Kendo, right? You're obviously burning cash in terms of attracting users.
Yeah.
How are you going to make that back?
Well, that's a very good question, because we've had like lots and lots of people ask us that. I think fundamentally, on a kind of broad philosophical level, you've got to offer the user something that they want. I mean, that's business, right?
Yeah,
The problem is most of us are technical, so we don't grow up thinking like this. But a business person goes, hey, you want people to buy cars, offer them a car that they want. So it's the same thing. You build a family tree. What do people want in a family tree? So the most obvious thing I can think of, and I don't think this is a trade secret, and we get this in our support requests every day. I want to print my family tree. So if you go to Genie today, you can print your family tree. Right, you go to Vervant or Itzartree or Moikrini, the German guys. Yeah. They offer a printing of the family tree. So like that is that's a really good example. So now how do you monetize that? So I'm not going to go into details, because then I'd probably get sacked. But that's one example of something that you can do. And if you look at all the different applications that people use and that people are interested in online, there's loads of ways of saying, okay, here's a user's data. How do we monetize that? The question, I think, is not about what the actual product is, because that's easy enough. If you put 3 or 4 people that are smart together into a room and say, hey, figure out a way to monetize this data, they're going to figure out what to do. I think the problem, and this is what I think personally, is that it's more about execution. It's how you execute that product and how you make it so good and so slick and so sweet that the user enjoys using it. Because that's when they're going to come back and spend money again. If you make the process and the flow unenjoyable, they're just going to drop out, and you're going to have a 60, 70, 80% dropout rate on your flow, and then you may as well just go home.
Yeah, so I guess, you build a good product, you probably make, the basic set free, and then, if you have big enough user base, you can, still make good money from some of the extra, features, professional accounts, whatever.
Without going into too much detail, because like a lot of the stuff I can't really talk about. So there's 2 elements. One is saying what products can we develop that are going to give value to the user. The other one is to say how can we tie in people who are interested in our user base with our actual user base without being really bad about it, like putting Google ads everywhere, because we've actually stayed away from doing it, whereas our competitors have done that and it looks really bad. And the third way is to say, well, if you've got a user base and your users are saying, hey, build us this product, then build them that product. More often than not, your users know what's best for them better than you do, because by and large, technical people sit in a very technical environment. They don't interact with average everyday users all the time. So their view of what products should be done and what people want is probably skewed. So just listening to your users is actually probably the best skill that you need to develop, because that's what you'll find people will tell you they want to pay for. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, that makes perfect sense. I mean, if only more people listen, right?
Yeah. I mean, if I had a pound for every time I've spoken to somebody who had a great idea, but I couldn't figure out how my mom was going to use it or my brother was going to use it, I'd probably be a little bit richer than I am now.
All right. Gareth, thank you very much for the insight, and good luck with Kinda.
Thank you very much. Thank you.